Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 206 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing real well.
Good.
Listen, we've got an episode out right now on TCAT. It's on Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate.
Yeah.
Fairly well-known case. I was left at the end of this, Gibbs, with kind of a burning question. Is this case a Bonnie and Clyde natural born killers type situation, or is it really, as Carol Ann has said, a scenario where she was forced into going on this spree with Charles Starkweather?
Yeah.
But it's definitely an interesting episode. Make sure you check that out. We've got some shout outs to give. For Patreon support, we had Jacqueline Wadenberger.
I like those hamburgers there.
You do?
Yeah.
Good burgers there?
Yeah.
Cassandra Harris.
Hey, Cassandra.
Jody Bishop.
What's going on, Jody?
Karen Sheets.
Hey, Sheets.
Chuck T.
What's going on, Chucky T?
Lauren.
Hey, Lauren.
Brennan Thornhill.
Well, thank you, Thornhill.
Amanda Hall.
What's up, Amanda?
Jana.
Good old Jana.
Laura Wyand.
Hey, Laura.
Erica Green.
Appreciate that, Erica.
Lulia Krupakova.
Ooh, some Krupakova.
There you go.
It's that coffee again.
That was good. Jean Henderson.
Hey, Jean.
Samantha Shepley.
What's going on, Samantha?
Jolene Martin.
Hey, Jolene.
Katie Raimondo.
Ramondo.
Eric Caudill.
Hey, Eric.
Tiffany Hoffman.
What's going on, Tiffany?
Alexander Ayer.
Ayer.
Ayer. Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
Terry Mitchell.
What's going on, Terry?
And last but not least, Darian Gibson.
What's going on, Gibby?
All Gibsons are good Gibsons. I know that's what you say.
Well,
I'm not convinced of that, but I'm sure Darian is.
I agree with you.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Lindsay Moffat.
Oh, appreciate that, Lindsay.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support and the long-term support like Lindsay's. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Greg Studley.
What's up, Studley?
Tammy Christie.
Hey, Tammy.
Richard Sims.
Hey, Sims.
And Jennifer Ailman.
Well, appreciate that, Jennifer.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's awesome. All right, Gibbs, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We have a doozy for everyone here. Two brothers disappeared while with a group of friends in the wilds of Alaska, almost a decade apart. 15-year-old Michael Palmer vanished without a trace in April 1999. It happened while he was on his way home from a party that he snuck away to attend with his friends while telling his parents he was sleeping at a friend's house. The party was a 9-mile bike ride away. And on the way home, in the company of the 3 friends he was with, who also attended the party, Michael fell behind the group and they lost sight of him. He was never seen again. And then you fast forward to 2010. That's when 38-year-old Charles Palmer, known as Chucky, went missing under kind of eerily similar circumstances. Chucky was out snowmobiling with a group of friends and his stepfather. Towards the end of the day, Chucky was seen by his group driving off in the wrong direction of the isolated cabin where the group was staying. Chucky's snowmobile was later found stranded in waist-deep snow, but no footprints were observed near the machine, and his body was never found. So let's dive into the details of these two disappearances. Two brothers who disappeared, Gibbs, about 11 years apart.
Yeah.
The Anchorage Daily News reported that on June 4th, 1999, Michael Palmer disappeared while riding his bike with a group of friends on a Wasilla, Alaska road when he was 15 years old. Michael lived with his parents, Charles and Lisa Palmer, his sister Hannah, and two older brothers, Chucky and the oldest brother, Chris. Michael was known to be a good kid who had never been in trouble with the law. He wasn't a kid known to be engaged in any kind of illegal or really any type of behavior that would cause problems.
That's because all Mikes are good kids.
Yeah, that's true. It kind of comes with the name.
Yeah.
By all accounts, he did well in school. He got good grades, and he was involved in a variety of sports and school events. He was described as well-liked by teachers and his peers. On June 3rd, 1999, Michael told his parents that he was going to spend the night at a friend's house, and he rode his bicycle to travel there and met up with three friends who also planned to attend the sleepover that evening. What no one knew was that Michael and the three other boys slipped out of the house secretly to attend a graduation party near the Meadow Lake subdivision outside Wasilla. This was nearly 9 miles from the home of his friend where he was supposed to be staying.
Man, do you remember those days when you would spend the night at your friend's house and how much fun that was?
Yeah, man, there was nothing better than a good sleepover with your best friends.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just, you couldn't wait for a Friday or Saturday night to be able to get together.
Yeah. You also remember riding your bike?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Okay, 9 miles seems like a lot to me now.
Right.
I might ride my Harley 9 miles pretty easily.
Right.
Back then, as a kid, wouldn't faze me.
Man, you got up at the early morning and went out and just rode your bike all day with your buddies.
Yeah. I wish I had half of that energy
Yeah.
that I had back then.
You probably had a cool bike, didn't you? You probably had that. Some people had that.
I had the Mongoose. Remember
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The BMX Mongoose.
Yeah.
And then I was one of the first kids in the neighborhood to have a moped.
Oh,
Remember the
ya?
moped? That was
Oh.
like the big fad.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of started my fascination with
Had a moped.
motorized vehicles.
Had a Pook moped.
I remember those.
Yeah. But the big one was the Thomas moped or something like that. Thomas or something like that was the one.
Yeah. I don't know which one I had, but it was really cool. It was black and gold. And
Yeah. Mine was black and silver. You probably had a Toma.
I probably did.
Yeah.
Because you know me. Whatever the best model is what I'm aiming to get. I strive for the best.
That was it back then.
So the boys rode their bicycles to the party. And Gibbs, from my understanding, this was the first big party that Michael had ever attended. And keep in mind, he was only 15 years old. According to Michael's friends, he had a couple of beers, but he was not noticeably drunk when the boys left the party to head home just after 4 a.m. on what was now June 4th. Okay, so there's a couple of things there. I can't say that I wouldn't have had a few pops at the age of 15 because I was like that. The one thing that really jumps out at me, though, is 4 a.m. is, pretty late.
Sure is.
Early, the next morning for a bunch of kids, 14, 15, 16 years old. I don't know the ages of the other three boys, but yeah, I don't know that I ever stayed out like that. But, I will say I had some supervision for sure.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, he wasn't at home. And I think that is key to this case.
Sure.
And we're going to get into some of the details of how they were able to maybe fly under the radar and all of that.
I know the only time I could really stay out late like that, and I did a few times, was when I would stay over at a friend's house a couple blocks over from me, and their parents always let them sleep out in the tent in the backyard. So after the parents went to bed about 1 o'clock, we would roll out of the tent, walk the neighborhood, for hours, doing things we probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a similar situation here. According to Michael's friends, the boys all started the ride together on their bikes as a group, but Michael fell behind them after a while. And I think this is the start of the mystery, right? In Michael's case, the reason that he fell behind is not known. And then you have the questions of when exactly did the boys lose sight of Michael? What happened? Did he experience some kind of mechanical trouble with his bicycle? You would think, Gibbs, if he ran into some type of trouble, some type of threat, he would have yelled out to his buddies or done something like that.
Yeah, I think in either of these cases, you could think that he would yell out for help, for assistance, right? If it's because his bike chain fell off his bike or Sasquatch came out of the woods.
Yeah, I think I would do a little more than yell for my friends if Sasquatch came out of the woods. But after I got a clean pair of underwear, I'd have to assess my situation. But I think you're right. Obviously, we don't know what happened. But if he was in a situation where he needed help and he did call out, well, then that most likely means that they were so far out in front of him that they couldn't hear him.
Right.
And then I think you have to ask the overall question, which is, why don't we have answers? Why don't we know some of the details on some of these crucial aspects of the case? Now, is it because all of these kids maybe had been imbibing and weren't really paying attention as much as they normally would? I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been.
I actually don't know if all the kids were drinking. We know that it was said that Michael was.
And I remember in those days when you're on your bike, sometimes people would just all of a sudden want to race and just take off. And if you weren't ready, you'd be left in the dust. Maybe that could have happened. And before you know it, they turn around. He's not there.
Now, while we don't have definitive answers to some of those questions, what we do know is that the other three boys pulled over and waited for Michael at the 7-Eleven convenience store on Parks Highway. We don't know how long they waited, but when he didn't show up, at some point, the other boys decided that he must have ridden back to his home. So they continued on their way and arrived at the house where they were having this sleepover. Now, none of the boys called Michael's parents to make sure that he arrived safely. And I think definitely at that age, Gibbs, I can see a couple of different reasons why they would not have wanted to do that. Number one, they wouldn't want to get Michael in trouble for sneaking out to attend a party where alcohol was served. And obviously this was a party with probably 18-year-olds,
right?
Graduates. And I also think there was probably some self-preservation in that decision as well. Not only do you not want to get Michael in trouble, you don't want yourself to get in trouble. And the minute you call his parents, what's going to happen?
Oh, exactly. I mean, I know that with my friend that I used to spend the night with, and a few times his dad did find out, man, it was not good for him. And you didn't want to be around when his dad laid down the punishment.
That, and would a parent then call your parents and say, hey, my son did this, but he was with your son, and I'm just wanting to let you know that they were at a party drinking alcohol, and then you're going to be in trouble.
And his dad would do that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents would, because they're responsible. You're staying the night at their house, and if something goes wrong, it's kind of their responsibility, I think, to let a parent know.
It wasn't my fault that my friend decided to open up a bunch of trash bags that had grass in it and dump them on a bunch of cars that were wet from the rain that happened earlier, and all that grass stuck on the car, and maybe some those little firecrackers, the lady fingers, found themselves on some bedroom windowsills on the outside, lit, exploding as we ran away.
So you guys were hooligans. That's what you're saying.
Was that my fault?
Yes, that was your fault. You went along with that. That was your fault. You were a hooligan.
Yeah.
Case closed. According to the Charlie Project, Michael's mother, Lisa Palmer, phoned Michael's friend's house on June 4th. This was after she returned home around 1 a.m. from her nursing shift at the hospital. She wanted to check on her youngest son and was told that the boys were sleeping out back in the clubhouse.
All I can say is if a parent called my house at 1 a.m., I'd be like, yeah, they're sleeping like I am.
Well, I thought it was a little strange that she would call at 1 a.m. Granted, she just got off of work.
Sure.
So 1 a.m. to her is a little different, but it's late for probably whoever the parents are at this other house.
Yeah.
But I think Gibbs, the parents did believe that, these kids were sleeping out back in the clubhouse. They later told investigators that they were unaware that the boys had left to attend the party. It appears as though no one went out to check on the four boys at any time that evening. Now, I think some parents will argue whether or not this is strange.
So anytime I spent the night at my friend's house, their parents never checked. I think they were just happy that the kids were out of the house, you know? Now, when kids stayed at my house, my mom was always around too much. But I was the same way. When my kids had friends over, I was always checking.
Well, and again, that's why I say I think it comes down to the parent. Because I do believe there are a lot of parents that would think, okay, got four boys. They're out back in the clubhouse. They're 15 years old or around that age. I don't know how old the other boys were. What am I going to do? Go out and check on them, every hour? What are they going to do? They're good kids. And other parents would think, no, if it was me, I would go check. So I think you'll have a divide on that particular aspect.
Yeah.
When Michael didn't come home that afternoon on June 4th, his mother, Lisa, called the friend's home again. And the friend told her that Michael was not there. So Lisa reported her son missing at 3 p.m. that afternoon, about 11 hours after he disappeared.
How upset would you have been?
Yeah, very upset. I also think the timing of when all this happened and how it happened is rough.
Yeah.
Because obviously it led to a huge delay in Michael's mother finding out that he was missing.
Because I think you could say if they would have went out and checked on the boys at 1 o'clock when she called, she could have found out that they weren't there. And then she could determine if she wanted to go look for them. But she didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of cases, we're talking about kids who were due to be home by dinner time, right? Let's say 5, 6 o'clock. Well, they don't show up. And very quickly, the parent knows something's wrong or believes that something could be wrong because, well, my kid knew that they were supposed to be home by this time. That's why I say the circumstances in this case are tragic just because of the timing. I mean, when you think about that delay and even knowing that your child is missing, well, that's a lot of time. It's almost half a day.
It sure is.
Has gone by.
Critical time.
The local police began a search for Michael and they recovered his bicycle, which was found in the Little Susitna River near Pittman Road. Years later, Michael's brother, Chris, said that he didn't think the bicycle found was Michael's, although I never could really find any reasoning that he's given for that belief. A thorough search of the river and the surrounding area was conducted in case Michael had fallen into the river and was possibly suffering from hypothermia somewhere nearby. Now, this river is pretty shallow and it flows downstream to a log jam. So if Michael had fallen in, most likely he would have been discovered. I mean, we're not talking about 20, 30, 40, 50 foot deep river.
Right. So she'd easily been seen or at least trapped down by the logs.
Yes. Tracker dogs were brought into the area, but they couldn't pick up Michael's scent near the river or in the nearby woods. Several search parties scoured the areas around the river in the woods, but had no luck finding Michael or really any leads.
Yeah, that's not good, I mean, you find his bicycle. You're hoping that maybe you find Michael nearby somewhere.
Well, if we go back to the theory of having bike trouble, right? You mentioned bike chain falling off, could have been a number of things. There's a couple of things that jump out at me. Number one, would he not have just walked on to the friend's house? But let's say, I don't know, maybe he got turned around or maybe he hurt himself and, was out in the elements. And I think either way, you would think finding the bike, he's probably not too far away if he's hurt or something along those lines.
Right.
And to not find him, then you have to be, I think, pretty discouraged because your other options are not good, right? Meaning he's been taken by someone or something happened to him against his will. Karen Aho of the Daily News reported that a teen who had also attended the graduation party that same evening contacted investigators when he found a pair of sneakers on his father's property next to a private airstrip located just 200 yards from the Little Susitna River. Okay, private airstrip, you think, well, that's fancy. But actually, I think a lot of people in Alaska have little airstrips.
Yeah, if you're a bush pilot or
a trapper that has to fly into, and maybe that's still a bush pilot, but you hear private airstrip, you think rich and famous.
Yeah.
But in Alaska, that's not always the case.
John Travolta has a private airstrip.
He does, but he's rich and famous.
He is.
And he does not live in Alaska.
Not that I'm aware of.
The sneakers were wet and muddy and were the same size and brand that Michael was believed to be wearing that evening. They were Converse high tops.
Pretty popular shoe.
Yeah, the Chuck Taylors.
I'm sure you had a pair.
I had a pair. You actually played in them.
They were
as old as you are.
They were good.
When you played for the team that the movie Hoosiers was based on.
That's when the basketballs were really leather basketballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real leather.
Well, you knew Chuck Taylor, so I mean,
he was a cool guy.
It makes sense that you would have a pair of his shoes.
His shoes were huge though, man. That guy had some big feet.
And you had little bitty shoes.
They weren't that big. Good one.
Just opening the door for me.
Yeah.
Let me walk right in. Investigators received calls from several teenagers to a hotline who told them about some fights that occurred at the party Michael went to. These rumors also placed Michael at some other parties that night. Police investigated the calls and the parties mentioned, but they couldn't find any evidence that Michael was involved in a fight or that he had attended any other parties.
I don't think I've ever been to a party when I was a kid that didn't have a fight going on.
Yeah, it seemed like that was pretty natural for a fight to break out.
Yeah.
I saw a guy break a pool stick over another guy's back.
Yeah.
One time over a girl. It was usually over a girl.
That happened to me at the Roadhouse once.
Did it?
Yeah.
You and Patrick Swayze?
Yeah. But I also remember going to parties and you're there having a great time and somebody's like, hey, we're all going down to such and such house. They've got a good party going on there too. Or they got a brand new keg.
Yeah, they just tapped a new keg. Or this party's winding down. Let's go to the next party.
Yep.
I think the question that you have to ponder is, would it be unusual for a large group of teenagers to cover up and keep secret the events of anything that happened to Michael that night at the party? What would be in it for them, or what would be the likelihood? I guess the only thing that would bring that into play is if, a bunch of these people were somehow involved with what happened to Michael, or were covering up for someone else who was involved.
Yeah. Or you were in that movie, I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, it's got to be one of those.
Right.
Because, you and I have talked about how hard it is for a large group or a group of people to keep secret about something very important.
Right.
It seems like there's always one person who has a guilty conscience or feels as though they need to unburden themselves of the secret that they're keeping,
Sure.
especially if they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. They'll tell somebody and that person's tell somebody before you know it, it's out.
Several months after Michael Palmer's disappearance, his brothers, Chris and Chucky, heard some stories being circulated by another boy in town. This boy was telling others that he saw Michael being beaten and shot on a local bridge. Michael's father, Charles, personally escorted the boy to the police station to be interviewed by investigators. But I think very quickly, Gibbs, police began poking holes in this boy's story. And after he failed a polygraph test, he recanted everything. He admitted that he made the whole thing up just to get some attention.
That's definitely the wrong type of attention to get.
Yeah, I get it. You know, kids want attention. They crave that sort of thing. It's why you see on Instagram people posting photos of them dangling off of a wire.
Yeah.
Have you seen this trend of like really dangerous, scary photos, selfies?
Right. Yep.
Okay, well, what else are you doing that for other than to get attention? Maybe there's some thrill seeking involved as well. But to try to get attention by, misleading police or giving false information about the disappearance of a child, it's kind of rough.
So you're giving the parents some false hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a good thing to do at all.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
According to the Daily News, Michael's father was skeptical of the story Michael's three friends told about the night Michael disappeared. So he hired two different private investigators to look into the matter. One of the investigators apparently stopped looking into Michael's disappearance, claiming she had received threats against her life.
That's a good reason to stop.
Yeah, so that's scary, right? Anytime your life is threatened. The other investigator uncovered rumors suggesting Michael had never left the party and was either murdered or kidnapped. Now, obviously, we're talking about rumors here.
Right.
So that means police weren't able to substantiate any of that. I do think it's very strange, Gibbs, that one of the private investigators claimed her life was threatened. Because to me, there's only one reason why that would happen. And it's because someone doesn't want you looking into this case.
Yeah. You're stumbled on to something that you maybe shouldn't have stumbled onto.
And who else would that be other than the person that had something to do with Michael's disappearance or knew who did and was protecting that person?
Right.
Maybe a child or something like that.
But I can see where Michael's dad's coming from too, right? By hiring these two private eyes, because I would have a hard time hearing the story from the three other kids too. Why would you just keep riding away? Why would you not stop and go back?
Yeah, there's some, I don't want to call them holes, but there are some things about that story that make you think something doesn't seem right. Now, obviously, the rumors about Michael having never left the party, if that is true in any way, then that means that the story that the boys told couldn't possibly be true.
Right.
I also think it's some rough stuff to hear, right? As parents, that your son never left the party when all of the information up to that point was that he did. got to be going through your head that, okay, something really bad has happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're already thinking that at this point anyway. As often happens when a tragedy rips through a family without warning, the strain on the Palmer marriage led to their divorce. And I think we see this time and time again. And couples have a really hard time staying together in the wake of a tragedy that befalls their child.
There's going to be some blame that's going to go around.
Yeah. As much as you don't want to, it's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's also part of the conversation around all of the collateral damage that happens in these cases. You know, the families, what do they go through? What do they have to live with? In a lot of instances, it completely devastates entire families. I mean, I think, things like this are something that most people, they really can't even imagine. What type of stress? It must be unbearable. Gibbs, day after day, to not know what happened to your child, to not get any answers. My thought is it's nonstop. And for most people, it's probably all consuming. Like there is nothing else for at least a long period of time. And for some, I think until the day they die.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's always going to be there, weighing you down.
Michael remains missing to this day. His family believes that he is dead. They just have no idea what happened to him. His case remains open, but without additional evidence, unless somebody comes forward with information, I think a resolution in the near future is unlikely. I don't know how they will solve his case unless somebody that knows what happened to him that night, that early morning, comes forward and says, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah, on the bike ride home, this really is what occurred. Sorry we didn't tell you, X amount of years ago.
Well, I think that's the case if you believe either the friends that he was with know what happened to him, or there was some type of accident, cover up. Gibbs, there was a lot of people drinking that night. A lot of those people were probably driving.
Sure.
And it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're riding down the road on their bikes and Michael got hit by a drunk driver. That driver panicked and did something to cover it up. That's a possibility.
Well, I think it's a big possibility.
And obviously that person and anybody with that person would have knowledge of what happened. So either way, whether it was an accident, cover up, or he was kidnapped, murdered, there's got to be somebody that knows, and that person's going to have to come forward.
Yeah.
In order to break the case and give the family what they need, which is just what happened. Unfortunately, this was not the only tragedy to occur within the Palmer family. They were hit with another devastating blow when their middle son, Chucky, also disappeared without a trace. On April 10th, 2010, 11 years after Michael disappeared, Chucky Palmer disappeared while riding his snowmobile with family and friends near Talkeetna, Alaska, about 70 miles north of Wasilla. On April 9th, 2010, Chucky Palmer, along with his older brother Chris, their stepfather, and two friends, went on a trip to the Talkeetna Mountains, where they planned to spend a few days riding their snowmobiles through the woods. They parked their vehicles and trailers on Mastodon Road near Bald Mountain. They then used their snowmobiles to travel to the cabin, which was about 5 miles away.
Did you ever ride some snowmobiles?
I never have.
And
it's one machine I think I've never ridden.
I've done that once.
Seems like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. But I also had a friend that had a brother-in-law that would go out snowmobiling all the time out on farmland. And kid you not, he was going so fast. He came up to the place where the fence had barbed wire, took his head right off.
All right. That's dark.
That is dark.
It's very dark.
Yeah. But it was tragic.
Well,
sure.
I do think they're dangerous. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people get killed running into trees and things like that. But what isn't dangerous nowadays? Everything fun is dangerous.
It is.
To some extent. According to reporter Robin Bearfield, on the morning of April 10th, the handlebar on Chris's snowmobile snapped off, and he was forced to stay at the cabin to work on repairs. Chris was an experienced snowmobile rider, but Chucky wasn't. But it didn't matter. Chucky was excited to go riding with the other guys. KTNA News reported that, according to the group riding with Chucky, everything went well until they started heading back to the cabin on the main trail. Chucky's stepfather was in the lead, and Chucky was at the rear of the group. Around 7:15 p.m., Chucky got separated from the rest of the group. And then, just like his brother Michael a decade earlier, Chucky disappeared without a trace. According to his fellow riders, they last saw Chucky traveling the wrong way, in the opposite direction from their cabin.
That's concerning.
Yeah, I mean, when you throw in all the factors, knowing that he wasn't all that experienced riding, it's getting late.
Yeah.
It's going to be dark, I'm sure, at some point. He's traveling in the wrong direction. It's very, very cold, which we're going to talk about.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a lot of cause for concern. Now, Chucky had on his snowsuit, so he was addressed for the weather, but he didn't have a GPS navigation device to help him find his way back to the cabin. He also didn't have a way to make fire. He had no food or water.
That's a big problem.
That's a big problem in any survival situation.
I mean, I know you have a GPS unit just to get from here to the refrigerator across the way, just in case.
You know, my motto, always be prepared.
Yeah.
Like the Boy Scouts.
You're very prepared.
Chucky was not reported missing until the following morning, which was about 12 hours later. And by then, a snowstorm had hit, and it hampered the search party's efforts to find him. The Alaska State Troopers formed a large search group that eventually performed an extensive search in and around the area Chucky was last seen. They also searched around the cabin. The troopers eventually located Chucky's snowmobile in some deep snow near Sheep River. This is about 12 miles from the cabin. The Alaska State Troopers theorized that he must have gone off on a side trail, gotten lost, and then got stuck in some soft snow.
I remember I used to watch, I think the series was called The Mountain Men or something like that on Discovery.
That was one series. Yeah, Mountain Men.
These guys would go up into the mountains with they call them sleds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time one guy did exactly that. He got off the trail. The track came off, couldn't get it back on. He had to walk like 5 miles or something like that through the dark in the wilderness. Somehow he made it to his cabin, but.
Well, probably because he was a mountain man.
Well, that's true.
And he had the skills. He lived out there.
Right.
And so he had the skills to survive. You're talking about, okay, somebody that lives in Alaska, but do they have the type of survival skills needed in a very harsh environment?
Yeah.
With no food, no water, you can't make a fire. You're not going to last long.
No.
In very cold weather in Alaska without any of those with you. The Fairbank Daily News reported that despite the soft, deep snow that was waist high on a grown man, no footprints were found near the snowmobile, and the helmet Chucky was wearing has never been located. Now, we just talked about it. There was a big snowstorm that hit after he went missing. It was big. We're talking about 28 inches. That's the type of snow that, could have covered up his tracks.
Sure.
There were some people who thought they still should have seen some indentations from where he walked away from his snowmobile because, like we mentioned, the snow was waist high.
That's the worst, man. I think I've told you before how I walked through waist high snow up in South Dakota, and it was rough. It was not easy. Now, that's when I was out of shape, too, so it made it even more difficult.
I don't care if you're in Jason Bourne mode. That is very difficult to do for, an extended period.
Yeah.
But 28 inches of snow is a lot. I actually thought that was a typo when I first saw it. You know, around here we get 4, 5, 6 inches. That's a ton of snow.
That's a big day.
But the weather continued to worsen. And 5 days into the search for Chucky, it was stopped because the snowstorms just became too dangerous. You know, at some point, Gibbs, in those types of conditions, you have to make tough calls.
Right.
You can't endanger the lives of a whole bunch of people to continue to search for one person. That sounds horrible to say, but sometimes the conditions just get so bad. Now, as a family, you don't want to hear that.
No.
Not at all.
But you also don't want anybody else to lose their life searching for your loved one.
That's true. In June of 2010, another search was conducted by Alaska state troopers after the snow melted, but the search turned up no evidence of Chucky or any of his personal belongings. So I think that tells you how bad it was. It took them a couple of months to get to the point where they could resume searching. The family believes what happened that day was that the other riders, including his stepfather, they were just so much more experienced riders. They were going faster than Chucky could go. He couldn't keep up with them. And because he was in the very back, he got further and further behind. I think the question that a lot of people have is that once the other party members saw Chucky drive off in the wrong direction, why didn't they go after him? And I think it's a very valid question. The problem is we don't know the answer.
Right.
I don't think these individuals have ever answered that question, or if they have, I haven't seen it.
I just picture like the leader going like this, like, come on, guys, let's loop around and go after him. And you would think if they were going so much faster than him in the beginning, then they should be able to turn around and catch up to him just as fast.
But even if we had an answer to that question, I don't know that it would help explain what happened to Chucky. They found no tracks. They didn't find his helmet. They didn't find anything near his snowmobile. Some troopers and volunteer searchers said it was like aliens abducted him right off of his vehicle. There was just no trace. And I think that comes from no tracks, right? How is somebody walking in this very deep snow? Now, it's possible, like we said, that the 28 inches covered up whatever tracks he had made.
Sure.
Very possible. But I also get that statement when you're looking at this machine and just a sea of white around it, undisturbed, it would look like somebody just came from the air and lifted him right off of this snowmobile.
Yeah.
Chucky Palmer was 30 years old when he disappeared, and he left behind 3 daughters. He is presumed to have died of exposure shortly after he went missing and was declared legally dead in April 2011. So Gibbs, we know, has to be devastating to have someone close to you vanish without any type of reasonable explanation. It's tough to lose a loved one, but I also think it's very tough to lose someone and have no idea what happened.
Yeah, because you would want to know that. You would just keep racking your brain every night, wanting answers.
Yeah, I think it's the not having any answers in some of these unsolved cases that would be the hard part for family members. I mean, it's always going to be tough anytime you lose someone. And I'm not saying that one situation is easier than the other. But if you lose someone in a car accident, okay, it's devastating.
Sure is.
But you know what happened.
Yep.
You're going to get the details on who did what and why everything happened the way it did. I think some of these disappearance cases, like you said, racking your brain, it would just eat at you for years and years and years, most likely until the day you die.
Yep.
And then add on top of that, having 2 people in your family, 2 of your kids, or in the case of siblings, 2 of your siblings vanish essentially into thin air. That would be doubly heart-wrenching for family and friends.
And as a parent, you're probably like, with your remaining kids,
don't go anywhere.
Exactly. You're not going on any trips. You're not going anywhere without me right by your side.
And we've heard that in cases where one sibling disappears and is never found. You have another sibling who's giving, information to reporters years later. And oftentimes that comes out that the parents became so overprotective. And you get that. You get why that would happen. You'd be so worried that you're going to lose another child, and you just can't let that happen on your watch. So, Gibbs, as we wrap up this episode, it's so mysterious to think about what happened to these two brothers and the fact that two children from the same family went missing in what you'd have to call extremely strange circumstances.
Very strange.
So then we get into the area of, is it a coincidence that two brothers would go missing while both with a group? They're both riding at the back of the group.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that really jumps out at me about this case, really two separate incidents, is that they're so eerily similar in some of the details that we know. No one hears or sees anything that led to Michael's disappearance, or I should say, have not come forward with information about his disappearance. Chucky is only seen going the wrong direction from a distance, yet no evidence or answers have been found for either of them. It's almost as if the Alaska wilderness has completely swallowed them up. Now, to be fair, it's probably easier to get lost in Alaska than most states.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Or maybe any other state.
Right.
Number one, it's huge.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it that's uninhabited. I think that's part of the wonder and the amazing aspect of Alaska. I think that's what draws many people, is the fact that you can go out there and not bump into somebody every 2 seconds. You can get away.
Yeah, it's your kind of place for sure.
In Alaska. It is, except for the extreme weather.
Right. Take that away, you be there.
And the complete darkness.
Yeah.
At times. I don't know. I think I could deal with that, but I don't know if I can deal with the weather.
I do find it interesting, too, that Michael's case, they waited 11 hours before the police were involved. And Chucky wasn't reported until 12 hours later.
Yeah, I think that's valuable time that you would want to get back if humanly possible, right? You'd like for police to be involved 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes after you know that someone's disappeared. The problem is, at least in the case of Michael, it was just bad information. I don't think it was malicious on the part of these people that, own the home where the sleepover was. I just think they got a call at 1:00 in the morning and thought, well, of course they're out there. Now, could you make the argument that a little due diligence was in order, could have been done? Well, sure you can.
Sure.
Can you blame them? I think it's pretty tough to put a massive amount of blame on those folks. I could see myself doing that in a similar situation.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're good. They're here. They're out in the backyard.
Yeah.
They're in the treehouse. They're camping. They're in the tent.
Not a concern.
No. So ton of questions in these two separate cases. When you talk about Michael's case, I think a lot of it goes back to the three friends that he was with that night. Some of the information that we don't have that I'd love to know is exactly how much they were pressed on the details of exactly what happened that night on that ride home.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were, or if they were, how hard was it? Because I know I'm struggling with, and you're struggling with as well, this idea of them leaving him, not going back to look for him, and kind of just making the assumption that he went home.
Yeah, because I think if that was one of my friends, we would go back. Like, all right, let's double back and see if we can find him. I wouldn't just wait in the 7-Eleven parking lot for him to catch up. I would say, let's go back and see if we can find him. Maybe something happened on the road. Maybe you got a flat, whatever. Let's go back and see if we can help.
Yeah, you might wait in the 7-Eleven parking lot for a little while.
Sure.
Knowing how long it should take for him to catch up. But then I'm thinking, yeah, you're probably going to want to double back and just make a quick check. Now, it's hard to blame 14, 15, 16-year-old kids for not doing something that you believe they should. And I always want to be careful with that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's unless you're in that circumstance yourself, you won't know.
Yeah, I don't want to cast blame on them because I'm sure this is something they have to live with too.
I think you really got to ask yourself, did something really happen to Michael at the party?
Yes, if the information that one of the private detectives got is correct, then it really does kind of blow a hole in the story told by these 3 kids. Because obviously, if something happened there, he doesn't leave the party, they're not traveling together, and he falls behind. That doesn't happen.
Right.
That would then become a story that was made up, and you'd want to know the reason why that was made up. And then I think some of the same questions can be asked of the people that Chucky was with on the day that he disappeared. To this day, no trace has been found of either brother. And I'll say it again, Gibbs, it's a lot of heartache for one family to endure. Losing one child would be unimaginable. Losing 2 children 11 years apart in these very strange circumstances and not having a clue.
Right.
As to what happened to either one, I don't know how you cope with something like that. I just don't know.
And I don't want to know.
No, nobody wants to know. But your heart has to go out to this family. If you have any information about the disappearances of either 15-year-old Michael Palmer in 1999 or 30-year-old Chucky Palmer in 2010, please contact the Alaska State Troopers at 907-745-2131 or 907-269-5058. 2 tragic cases wrapped up in one episode. To me, this is one of the more mysterious cases. Maybe it's because there was 2 brothers who disappeared under similar circumstances. I mean, how many times has that happened? I don't know that you're going to find many.
I don't think you will.
Instances like that. But that's it for the case of the Palmer brothers. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Judy. I'm out in Casper, Wyoming. I listen to you guys all the time. I drive for Grubhub, so I'm constantly listening to you guys. I think I've been through your whole series about twice now, just going through every podcast you've done. You guys are amazing. You're my favorite true crime guys. Definitely Team Gibby. I have a case that I would like you to look into. It's called, the victim's name was Vera Jo Rigel. It happened in Ohio somewhere, I actually believe. There's kind of a weird, there's a weird documentary about it called Goodnight Sugar Bear that talks about it. You should check it out. I'd love to hear your coverage on it. Anyway, keep your own time ticking. Thank you so much. Love you guys.
Yeah, it's weird, Gibbs. That name sounds so familiar. Like at first I thought, okay, we've already covered that case, but I don't believe we have. Maybe we've heard about it, maybe because it's in our home state. I don't know, but we definitely have to check into it.
Hey, she's from Wyoming. We just did a case in Wyoming on TCAT.
Yeah, definitely. Hope she listens to that.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Tori from Utah. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I just listened to the Gary Allen Walker case, and in the voicemails, there's a woman who told Gibby that he should continue to practice his accents, and I don't want to be rude, but I think your accents should be left where they are. They're beautiful. You don't need to practice it. Well, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
She said your accents are beautiful.
Loves my accents.
And a lot of people do. But it doesn't mean you can't practice your craft. You can always continue to practice your craft.
As always, is a practicing.
Yeah, practice that one.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Heather from Vancouver, Washington. I just wanted to call and say I absolutely enjoy both of the podcasts. I started with True Crime All the Time and then discovered Unsolved. I went through Unsolved quicker than I have the regular one, but absolutely love you both. And then I am also going to say that I am hashtag Team Gibby, because there is a possible connection between Gibby and I in our families. So interesting, I know. I hope it's true, but I don't know. I'm doing some research. Anyways, you guys are great. Keep your own time ticking.
Well, I do have some family members up in Washington.
You might have found a long lost relative.
Maybe.
Look at what this show's doing.
Yeah.
We're informative. We're putting long lost relatives together.
Connection.
It'll be interesting to see what she finds out.
Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Joey. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. Love your podcast. Definitely Team Ferguson, but I do like you both. I've been listening since September of last year. I got all caught up on TCAT, and even though I said I'd probably not listen to Unsolved because I like hearing outcomes and trials, I did start it anyway because I was missing your voices. Anyway, I have a couple new TCAT episodes to catch up on now. Just listen to the Tracy Richter case. I hadn't heard about it before, but I think it is the first episode that was so close to home. So I just wanted to call. Took it as a sign to leave a voicemail. Even though I am on your Patreon, I don't get a lot of time to watch the videos. I have 3 kids that keep me busy. But just wanted to call and let you guys know that I love listening. Anyway, keep doing you. Keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
Wow, a rare Team Ferguson.
Man, you got a big old smile on that face.
I don't hear it very often, man.
Oh, you hear it a lot.
No, I don't. It's rough. So I'm Team Gibby. No, I'm Team Gibby. Oh, I'm Team Gibby.
That's the one that really gets you.
It's like coming from all directions. No, we love everyone. We appreciate it. It's all in good fun. Gibbs, that's it for our case on the Palmer brothers and another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.